Chapter 13, we are looking at trends in physical activity sport and how it relates to the population. This one, I'm not even looking at the right book. This chapter is, it's interesting. It's a lot of data and interpretation and that sort of thing. So if you're doing health and human, you should be pretty good at the whole interpreting data. From time to time in PE, you'll be asked to analyze graphs and look at what the data is, telling us. It's painting a picture and it's asking you to, read between the lines. So let's have a look at this slideshow. So here's our learning intention success criteria. By the end of it, you'll be able to, hold on. So back again. By the end of this, you'll be able to identify trends that exist in relation to physical activity and sedentary behaviours. Moving on. So, how active are we? The governments, they have an important role to play in the promotion of physical activity, but we also have, a role of our own to play. We need to be sufficiently active, to avoid lifestyle diseases and all those sorts of issues. But, the government, their role is to research and collect data and then monitor the physical activity levels through the communities, and perhaps they might need to target an age group that is, let's say, lagging behind or not sufficiently active. And then we have these government agencies, and there's multiple ones of them that that promote physical activity, that collect the data, that help people become physically active. So we've got the Department of Health, the Bureau of Statistics, the Sports Commission. They all do different things, but all of them in some way, shape or form record and store data relating to that sort of thing, physical activity. So then they're able to give us information relating to lifestyle diseases, cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, all those sort of ones that we've talked about in the past. So we get a national survey done every 4 years-ish. So it's called the Census. You may remember some cases of the Census in the past. The most recent one, I think, was like 2017, 2018, something like that, and it failed epically because they wanted to do everything online, and the system crashed. But essentially, it's a survey that's done every 4 years, and this is where we gather information on physical activity levels and that sort of stuff. Unfortunately, though, it takes time for that information to be released to the public because they've got to process the information and analyze it and so on and so forth. So, the most recent data that we have on physical activity and sedentary behavior is from that sort of that 2011, 2013 period. So whilst it's 7 years old at this point, it's the most accurate data that we have that's been analyzed. So there should be another set coming out, if not already, which will give us another snapshot into how physically active people are. So how does it all get applied? Like, what's the point of doing all this collection? What are we going to do with it later on? So after, again, data collection, the governments did an analysis and discovered that a lot of people were insufficiently active. So Life Be In It began. If you do a bit of Googling on Life Be In It, it has been around since the 70s. Initially, it was used to promote physical activity just within Victoria, but then it was seen to have such a massive impact on Victoria that it was actually funded by the federal government and it was pushed out Australia-wide. It was used in America, so eventually it was actually pushed worldwide too. So the bloke on our right there, Norm, with his big fat beer gut sitting in front of the TV on the couch, and his wife in her activewear. Norm wasn't sufficiently active, and it was a way of encouraging people to be physically active. So it's still, Life Beyond It is still around. We just don't tend to see the ads like we used to. I remember growing up as a kid seeing the ads. I've showed you one of those in a previous slideshow. What I want you to do now is I want you to read page 260. We are still a nation of norms. So pause the video and come back to this. Also, you need to answer the questions. I forgot to add that too. There's 3 questions based on the information that you read, so just complete those in your workbook. So we have a snapshot of you guys as kids. So here's just a little bit of information. You guys 5 to 17 years old from the most recent data sets that we have. So 59% of you guys met the recommendation of doing physical activity of 5 out of the 7 days. Okay, you guys should be active every day, not just 5 out of the 7. Only 19% were doing the recommended amount of physical activity for each day. 91 minutes was averaged per day. So the minimum that they suggest is 60 minutes. So 19% of all the children in Australia aged 5 to 17 were doing 60 minutes of physical activity. 48% of you met the recommended 60 minutes per day, at least 5 out of the 7 days. An average of 6 minutes of screen time used for homework per day. 6 minutes of screen time used for homework, but you can average 136 minutes of sedentary behavior. And then we have 29% of you meeting the no more than 120 minutes of screen-based entertainment per day target. 29%. So that means that there is a lot of you. What are we talking? 71% who are sitting on the phone or the computer or the Xbox or whatever it might be more than what you should be. And just 60% of you average at least 60 minutes of physical activity per day. So that's just a snapshot of you guys. There's some interesting facts and figures there. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to read the text, the Global Report Card for Physical Activity for Children and Youth. So it's where is it? It's a bit of a real world application to what we've been reading about so far. Have a read of that. It goes from page 263 to 65, and then I want you to do questions 1, 2, 5, and 6 in your books. I will also set up an assessment task on Teams for you to do it there. Go for it. Back alive again. So this graph, we're going to look at this in a second, but this is what we're talking about with analyzing data and that sort of thing. So back in 2000, year 2000, so 20 years ago now, Jesus, I'm old, 57% of Australians were deemed to be engaged in some sort of physical activity that was sufficient enough to meet the guidelines. Okay, so that's 20 years ago. Almost 60% of the population were doing something. Okay. Later on, the Australian Health Survey was run again. Okay, and in the 2011-2013 data that was collected, the number had declined to 43%. So that's a massive drop. And you've got to be wondering, well, why was there such a drop? What was the reason behind it? Was it because things had changed in terms of like technology? Because let's look at it, year 2000. My first mobile phone I actually got was just in the year 2000, and it was the Nokia 5110. All right, so if you don't know what it is, Google it. That was the extent of mobile phones back then, but then you jump forward to 2011, 2013, and we're talking Android smartphones, we're talking Apple iPhones. So, consoles had also come a long way as well, Xbox and Nintendo and PlayStation and those sort of things. So perhaps those consoles and those devices had an impact on people's physical activity levels. Don't know. This is what analyzing these graphs is all about. You're making inferences as to why things have changed. So if you were to have a look at the graph on the right, what observations can you make about it? Okay, well, for starters, there is a big difference. There's almost, let's say, that was a terrible line, maybe 57, 58% of males aged 18 to 24 are doing at least 150 minutes of physical activity per week, and only, let's say, maybe 48% of females are sufficiently active. So there's a big difference there. But then you can see the trend with the males decreases, and it's probably about the same as females, maybe about 48, 49% when they get to the age of 25. Why? What's the big difference? Maybe they're working or working more. Maybe they don't have time. This is sort of around the time that you might start to have kids. I think I was about 27 when I had my first child. So priorities are starting to change. They settle down, they might get married, so on and so forth. And then you can see it even declines even further. So we're down to, what's that, about another terrible line, but it's about 40, maybe 45%. So it declines even further there. And it stays around the same. 55, 65, it decreases again. But females are still quite, let's say, well, I'm having a mental blank, consistent. They're quite consistent throughout. But then there's something that goes on here right at the end, 75 and over. Why females are in front here, or more active than their male counterparts, but then all of a sudden males have not necessarily jumped up, they've still decreased. They've gone down another, I don't know, it's kind of hard to say, maybe 5, 10%. Why is that? But what's happened between here and here for the females? That's, that's a massive drop. So they've gone from about, let's say, 40% to maybe 20%. What's the reason? I don't know. This is, some of the inferences that you need to make, reading between the lines. Maybe the males go out and, they'll go walking and they'll play golf and whatever else it might be, and the females tend to stay at home. Don't know. So this is why it's good to be able to read between the lines and, make educated guesses. So here's another graph. And what I want you to do is, once I get my buffet out of the way, actually it'll be gone anyway because I'll move it in the editing process. What I want you to do is I want you to look at the graph and I want you to answer the couple of questions there in your books. Next activity is completing the data analysis on page 272, 273. So if we skip to that and just let me get my book to the page. It is asking you to look at the Australian Health Survey. There was a pedometer study that was recorded. And these are the average steps for children your age. So have a look at those and then have a look at the questions and answer those. Again, I will set up a worksheet in Teams, and you guys can complete the work there. If you've got any questions, message me. So here we are again. We have another way of, I guess, displaying data. So this comes from the WHO, or the World Health Organization, not the rock band. It's found on page 275. So we're looking at international physical activity patterns now. So what you can tell from this this picture, if you will, is the number of, or the percentage, the prevalence. So the prevalence is, if you do Health and Human, you'll know, but it's the total number of cases over a time period. So this was, again, 10 years ago. So it's the most current information that we have, or had, when the textbook was written. But back in 2010, insufficient physical activity amongst adolescents aged 11 to 17 years for both sexes. So if you look at the graph there, or sorry, not the graph, if you look at the map, you've got color codings. So it says that Australia is sort of between 80 and 85% in terms of insufficiently active, which is not good. There are some countries there greater than 95% prevalence. And then you have countries who, we don't have data collected for, or it's not applicable. There are probably various reasons why there wasn't any data collected. Perhaps, I don't know. Actually, I honestly don't know why they wouldn't have data. Perhaps due to their location and their standing in terms of like third world country status and that sort of thing, it's not relevant. Yeah, again, we're making inferences, we're making educated guesses. So one thing I find interesting is that if we look up here in America, they're between 75 and 80%, yet we compare Australia to them and we're down at that 80. My colors aren't so good, maybe 80, 85. I think that's what I said before. 80, 85%. That's a terrible arrow. It doesn't even have a point. It's like it's run into a brick wall. But yeah, that's interesting, given that we're a sporting nation. What's going on, guys? You're letting us down. America's looking better than we are. Lift your game. That was 2010 though. So, participation in sport and physical recreation. We've said it in the past. We're a sporting nation. Okay, people, they think of Australia and they think sport. Okay, we're definitely into it. That's for sure. There are heaps of benefits of sport. It generates massive amounts of money for the economy. $13 billion. This whole coronavirus thing. The AFL have lost money. All the sporting codes have lost money as a result. The TV, the media have lost money because they're not getting paid to cover the games. The AFL aren't making money from people coming into the games, and it snowballs from there. But 7.6 million people watch some form of sport. So we're a population of, I don't know what we are exactly, but last time I heard it was about 24, 25 million. So almost a third of the population watch some form. And about 92% of us have an interest in at least one sport, whether that's soccer, AFL, hockey, cricket, tennis, motorsport. We have an interest in at least one sport. So the Australian Sports Commission has said that it enhances physical and mental health. It enhances the social connectedness, people going out to the club rooms and having a drink afterwards. It reduces crime because people aren't out on the streets smashing, up windows and carjacking you and all that sort of jazz. It improves international relations. So, you go out and you play cricket, for example, and you'll be mixing with different races. You'll Sri Lankans, Indians, Pakistanis, English people, whatever. The same with footy and soccer. And it's also been shown to improve academic results through just playing sport. Because your mental health is better, you're able to focus, you're fitter, you're able to concentrate for longer periods. It also, there's a certain level of commitment to training and participating in it, and that sort of has those effects that flow on to your study. So another graph, like I said, this whole trends thing it's a lot of looking at data and making guesses, educated guesses and that sort of thing. So these are the top 20 sports across all ages for 2013-2014. So questions. Which was the most popular for males? Which was the most popular for females? And which was the most popular for all persons? What else can you find on the graph that is interesting? I don't worry about writing this stuff down. Just have a look at the graph and, tell me, well, not tell me, you can't tell me, but just have a think about it and what stands out. I know for mine, something that stands out. This is, I believe this was in Australia. Just let me find the graph. Yes, this is Australia. So what I found interesting, and this is just me, but I mean, look at Aussie rules down here, right? Not even, let's say, maybe like 1% of the population are engaged in Aussie rules. Yet we have cycling and BMX and dancing and fitness and golf, jogging, netball, soccer. There's all these sports that are a lot more popular. And that's an interesting one. Walking for exercise, it's massive. It's across all ages. So there's probably going to be a lot of, say, elderly people that go out and walk for exercise. So, you can take out some quite interesting things out of this. You, I guess, would be asking the question, well, what's going on with Aussie rules? Why is it not as popular as, what we're led to believe? Anyway, have a look at the graph and, see what you can come up with. Maybe we'll discuss it when we come back. So another way of displaying information is through tables. And these are the top 20 sports by regular participation. So again, I don't want you to do this in your books or anything. I just want you to have a look at it and, what's interesting? What do you see that, I guess, strikes you as interesting and why? Again, if we look at this, we've got swimming up the top for ages 6 to 13, and there's 1.1, almost 1.2 million people that swim, which accounts for 48% of the population of those people in that age group. Where's Aussie Rules? Aussie Rules comes in at 11. Above them, we've got gymnastics, tennis, netball, cricket, dancing, basketball, track and field, cycling, soccer, and swimming. Does it strike you as interesting? Maybe. Then you can look over. We've got it broken down. We've got, try and draw a straight line between all this stuff. We've got ages 14 plus, and then we've got our totals too. That is not a very good straight line. The other one was better. so you've got 6 to 13, 14 plus, and then you've got the total. So this is a total population. And this comes from, I had to cut it off down the bottom because I wanted to fit it all on, but it's the Australian Bureau of Statistics from 2015. This is sorted, it's all states, all territories, it's all sexes, all ages. No, I'm reading the wrong one, sorry. Nope, this one comes from Roy Morgan, Single Source Australia, January 2014, December 2014. And it was a sample size of 2.5, just about 2,500 Australians. So, you know, have a look at it, see what you think is interesting. That's the end of the chapter. You need to complete page 282 in your books. Complete all the questions. Don't worry about submitting it in Teams, just do it in your books because we're back at school next week. Thanks for watching all my videos. Give me some feedback when we get into class.